The Second Intifada, a narrative of resistance. The Second Intifada, also known as the Al-Aqsa Intifada, commenced on September 28, 2000, at the heart of occupied East Jerusalem, marking a significant surge in Palestinian resistance. The uprising was triggered by a controversial visit from Ariel Sharon, then leader of the Israeli opposition, along with over 1,000 heavily armed Israeli forces, to the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, a site sacred to both Muslims and Jews. This event was not an isolated incident, but rather the result of years of mounting frustration and resentment among Palestinians, who had witnessed successive Israeli governments disregard the Oslo Accords and extend their occupation. The unfulfilled commitments of the Oslo Accords. The Oslo Accords, which were signed in the early 1990s, were anticipated to facilitate peace and the establishment of an independent Palestinian state. Instead of progressing towards peace, Israel had increased the number of settlers in the occupied territories from 200,000 to 400,000. This expansion was widely perceived as a deliberate attempt to obstruct the realization of a viable Palestinian state. The frustration was compounded by the breakdown of the Camp David peace talks in July 2000. Palestinian leader Yasser Arafat and Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak were unable to reach an agreement at the talks, primarily due to differences regarding the status of Jerusalem, the right of return for Palestinian refugees, and the territorial integrity of a future Palestinian state. There was a perception among many Palestinians that Israel was seeking to impose a solution that would prolong the occupation and infringe upon their fundamental rights. The commencement of the uprising. When Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon visited the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound, it was widely perceived as a deliberate provocation aimed at inciting a violent response from the Palestinians. The Palestinian reaction did not conform to Israel's expectations, as the early days of the Second Intifada were characterized by large-scale nonviolent demonstrations. Peaceful protests and sporadic instances of stone throwing were emblematic of the Palestinian resistance, which rapidly extended from Jerusalem to the West Bank and Gaza. In response to the onset of the Intifada, the Israeli military acted promptly and decisively. During the initial days, approximately 1.3 million rounds of ammunition were fired by Israeli soldiers, despite minimal Palestinian uprising at that time. Over the course of 5 days, 47 Palestinians lost their lives and 1,885 were injured. The majority of Palestinian casualties were civilians, and 80% of those killed did not pose a life-threatening threat to Israeli forces. During the Intifada, the level of violence intensified. Throughout the course of the uprising, at least 4,973 Palestinians lost their lives, including 1,262 children, 274 women, and 32 medical personnel. Moreover, the Israeli army demolished over 5,000 Palestinian homes and significantly affected an additional 6,500. The impact on Palestinian society was profound, yet the spirit of resistance remained steadfast. The Second Intifada, despite being widely portrayed for its violence by the mainstream media, also encompassed a strong dedication to nonviolent resistance. Palestinian efforts included organized protests against the Israeli military campaign, the expansion of settlements, the demolition of homes, and the construction of the separation barrier. These acts of nonviolent resistance may have been frequently overlooked, but they were integral to the Palestinian struggle. The aftermath and legacy. In 2002, Palestinian leaders sought to mitigate the violence by endorsing the Arab Peace Initiative, initially proposed by Saudi Arabia. This initiative aimed to provide Israel with recognition from the Arab world in return for a complete withdrawal from the occupied territories and a fair resolution for Palestinian refugees. The proposal, however, was disregarded by Israel, which persisted with its military operations. 2 decades since the beginning of the Second Intifada, the situation remains challenging. Israel persists in the expansion of settlements, demolition of Palestinian homes, and implementation of policies that are widely viewed as a de facto annexation of Palestinian territories. Despite these ongoing difficulties, the Palestinian people remain resolute in their determination to resist the occupation and attain their rights as per international law. The pursuit of freedom, sovereignty, and justice endures, with East Jerusalem envisioned as the capital of a prospective Palestinian state and the right of return for refugees as central demands. The events of the Second Intifada reflect the unwavering perseverance of the Palestinian people, who, despite facing significant challenges, adamantly pursued an end to the occupation and the realization of their aspirations for a sovereign and independent state. Their enduring commitment to seeking justice and self-determination, evident during the Intifada years, continues to guide their actions to this day. Israel's actions have significantly restricted the options available to the Palestinian people, leading to escalating hardships. The access to water, gas, electricity, and housing for Palestinians is deteriorating day by day. Israeli settlers persistently infringe upon the residency rights of Palestinians, displacing them from their land and homeland. In light of recent events, there is growing contemplation about whether the circumstances point to the onset of a third intifada.